I'm Alice Childs, and I will be talking about climbing your branch of the FamilySearch family tree. For this presentation, I just want to remind you to please silence all electronic devices and that there's to be no audio or video recording. Feel free to take pictures if you would like to. Just a little bit about myself. My name's Alice Childs, like I said, and I am an accredited genealogist professional. I specialize in mid-Atlantic research in the United States. I'm also the author of a blog called Genealogy Now, and you can find that at alicechilds.com. I want to share something with you that is one of my favorite things. These are my people, and they are some of the most amazing, beautiful, and wonderful human beings that you will ever meet. They inspire me every single day. I love spending time with them. These are also my people, and they also inspire me every single day. I have come to love them for what they have given me in the way of inspiration and support in difficult times. And one of my big goals in life is to make sure that their stories are not forgotten, that their lives are documented accurately, so that the people on that last slide will be able to access those stories and come to know and love them as much as I have and be inspired by them. And I use the FamilySearch family tree to do this. So let's talk a little bit about the FamilySearch family tree. A lot of times people talk about the FamilySearch family tree as if it's their own personal tree. And I just want to emphasize that the FamilySearch tree is not my tree, it's the tree. The goal of the FamilySearch tree is to create the world's largest online family tree that is a global and unified family tree for all mankind. So there are advantages to working on this collaboratively with other users. You can get things that you might not otherwise get if you are working on your tree alone. Sometimes other descendants of your ancestors have more information than you do. And by working together, you can create a better and more accurate picture of your family. That is a gift. But sometimes people get a little bit frustrated when they're working on the tree. You've probably felt some of the frustrations. Sometimes people change things that you feel are correct and they make them wrong. Or maybe they're just adding things that don't belong to the tree. So we're going to talk a little bit about what we can do to make sure our family tree is accurate and also to mitigate for those frustrations that we sometimes feel. Before we begin climbing our family tree, there are a few things that you will need to know, some navigational skills that you will need to acquire. And I want to point you to a resource called the Family History Guide. This is a website that has great lessons on how to navigate FamilySearch. And you will just go to the homepage at thefhguide.com, and at the top you'll select Learning Paths, and then choose the family tree. And in their FamilySearch Project 1, there are 14 lessons that will be very valuable to walk through. And I walked through these lessons a couple of years ago. I use FamilySearch all the time, and I learned some things that I didn't know. So I highly recommend, if you don't feel like you know how to navigate FamilySearch very well, to go ahead and go there. I do want to talk about a few points about navigating the FamilySearch family tree and give you a few skills that you will need as you start to climb your tree and try to evaluate it for accuracy. So the first thing that you will do is log into FamilySearch.org, and you're going to click the tree tab, the family tree tab. It appears at the top of any page on FamilySearch, and there will be a drop-down list, and you'll select tree. There are a few different ways you can view your tree. This is called the landscape view, and it's the default that generally comes up with the first time you log in. And it is a really fun way to look at your tree. It's fun to click the arrows and go backward in time. But for me, it's not the most efficient way to go about looking at my tree when I am studying my ancestors. So what I like to do is up in the top right, you can click where it says landscape, and then a little drop-down list comes up, and choose fan chart. So this is what a fan chart looks like. And your name will be in the center, and your paternal ancestors are on the left-hand side of the fan, and your maternal ancestors are on the right-hand side of the fan. And to go and view one of your ancestors, you'll just click on their name and go to their profile page. This is what a profile page looks like. It gives you information about your ancestor. It will tell you the dates that they were born and married and died. It gives you, if you scroll down, you can see information about their family members. And I'm going to be referring to the profile page a lot today, so I just want to make sure you understand. This is what I'm talking about when I talk about someone's profile page. So one skill that you're really going to need as you climb your family tree is editing details. Sometimes you'll find that there are incomplete or inaccurate details, and you will need to edit those. So you can edit any detail or many details on someone's profile page with the little pencil icons that you see here. And so anytime there's a fact that can be edited, there will be a pencil icon, and you'll just click on that, and that's going to open a box for you where you can enter the correct information or the additional information. And all changes that you make are tracked in FamilySearch, and I will show you why that's important in just a few minutes. When you are entering dates and places on FamilySearch, you want to be sure and do what's called standardization. And what that is FamilySearch uses the information on an ancestor's profile to look for records that match that ancestor. That's what generates the record hints that we see on FamilySearch. And so we want to put our places and our dates in a format that FamilySearch's algorithms will recognize and be able to generate those hints for us. So if something is not standardized, in the red box that you see here, you can see red letters. You might not be able to read them, but I will tell you it says non-standardized place. And when you see that, you're going to want to click on the pencil icon and change that to a standardized place. And on the right-hand side, you can see I just started typing Ohio in the box because this event took place in Ohio, and a few different options will come up. You want to select the option that's most correct or most close to what you believe the right place is, and that will allow those algorithms to work within FamilySearch. Once you have your dates and places standardized, it's going to tell you. You'll see a green check mark under each date and place, and it says standardized place or standardized date. Another thing that you want to be able to do is add family members to your tree. As you start working, you might find additional family members. And so on any ancestor's profile page, you're going to see places to add spouses, children, parents, and siblings. So in order to do this, you'll just click on the correct option for whatever person you want to add. You'll start typing in information about your ancestor that you've found. And then FamilySearch will look and see if that person is already on the tree, and if they are, it will give you the option to select that person. If not, FamilySearch will give you the option to add the person to the family tree. In the upper right-hand corner, you will notice that if you already know the person that you want to connect to your ancestor, you will see they have a little PID number on their page, and you can just enter their information by ID number. Just type in the ID number to add them. Your ancestor's profile includes tabs along the top of the page, and the Sources tab is where you can see all the historical documents that have been attached to your ancestor's profile. We are going to talk more about the process of finding and attaching records in just a few minutes, but I want you to know that sometimes records do get attached to your ancestor that don't belong to that person. And so you need to be familiar with the process for detaching records as well as attaching records. So what you will do is you'll click on the little drop-down arrow on the right by a source, and you can evaluate that source. And if you've reviewed everything and you've determined that this is a source that actually doesn't belong to your ancestor, you can see in the little grayed out area on this page, there's a detach button. I've put a red box around it. When you click detach, it will come up with this box where you can detach the source, and you will state your reason for detaching the source. We want to track what we're doing and let other people understand why we are making the decisions that we make as we climb our family tree. Another thing that sometimes happens is that people get added to the FamilySearch family tree multiple times, resulting in what we call duplicates. So one person with multiple entries on the family tree. And FamilySearch provides us the ability to merge these duplicates. And this is a time when you want to examine both individuals very carefully before you merge them. And you will want to study things like their names, their dates, the places that the events occurred for those individuals, and to the best of your ability, determine whether they're the same person. If you decide that they're a reasonable match, you can go ahead and click Review Merge. So they will show you, FamilySearch will show you possible duplicates on your ancestor profile page up on the top right-hand side. And you'll just click on the duplicate, and then you have the opportunity to review that merge. What happens is one person will come up on the left, the person that's going to be deleted, and the person that's going to be the surviving person comes up on the right. And you have the opportunity now to compare side by side all of their information and determine whether they are a match. Again, just like I talked about before, you'll want to look at the places and the dates and the family members, relationships, and make sure that everything looks like it fits. I wanted to show you this example because this is a time when you would not merge two individuals. So this one, on the left, I have Edward Spencer, and he has, the only information I have about him is a wife and a son. And the name of his wife and his son exactly match the person on the right, Edward Spencer. He has a wife and a son by that same name. But there's nothing else on the record on the left. And so without extra data points, I don't have any idea whether this is the same person or not. It could just be people that have the same names. So this is a time when I would not merge the individuals because I don't have enough information to make that decision. So I would just click Not a Match up at the top. If it was a match, I would click Yes, Continue, and FamilySearch would walk me through the process. Whenever you say yes, it's a match or it's not a match, FamilySearch will give you pre-populated reasons as to why you are making this decision. So for this one, I chose the one that said there's not enough information to confirm that these are the same person, and I just added a few more details, just what we've talked about, that there was only the names and nothing else, so I didn't have enough information to merge them. So what happens when individuals get merged and you determine later that they are not the same person? I don't know about you, but I do make mistakes when I'm doing my genealogy, and I'm sure that probably all of us do. But there are ways to fix the mistakes that we make. So if we have two individuals that get merged and we later determine that they need to be unmerged, we can fix that. So on every ancestor profile page, there's a box called Latest Changes, and I have it in a little red square here. And you can see the first few changes, but you can see all the changes that have ever been made to this individual by clicking Show All. When that comes up, you can scroll down until you see the place where the merge took place for that ancestor. And FamilySearch is going to show you the surviving person and the deleted person. And if you want to unmerge them, you'll click on the deleted person, and it will come up with this little box. And then it will give you the option to go to their person profile page. When I click on that for the deleted person, it comes up with a box like this with a message that says this person has been deleted. And it gives you the option to restore the person, and that's what you want to click to unmerge these individuals. So that's a skill that you might need as you're climbing your family tree and checking for accuracy. All right, now that we have some of the basic navigational skills under our belt, we are ready to begin the climb. Now, we don't want to jump willy-nilly from branch to branch and here a little and over here a little. As we climb, we want to be organized about this, and we are going to follow the genealogy research process as we climb our branch of the FamilySearch family tree. I like to remember the process by thinking of the word family. Every letter in the word family stands for a step in the genealogy research process. So the first step is to find someone to research. The next step is we're going to analyze everything that's already known about that ancestor. Then we're going to look at a map and timeline and learn some more things about our ancestor by doing that. Next, if we determine we need to find some more records for our ancestor, we're going to examine what I call instant records. And then we're going to look for additional records as needed. And finally, my favorite step in the process is that once we've done this work and we've solved some mysteries or found some information about our family, we need to take the time to celebrate, because this is an important work and it's a fun work. So we need to take the time to step back and say, okay, I did it. So the first step, finding someone to research. When you're working on a genealogy problem, that's the first thing you do, is define the problem and who the person is that you're researching. When you're working to verify your tree, this step means that you're going to decide what line in the family that you're going to work on. You are going to focus on one generation at a time, and you're going to examine every family unit very carefully as you go. You want to examine all the details and sources about that person, their spouse, and their children before you move on to the next generation. So there are a couple of strategies that you can use as you do this. This is one possible strategy. You can start with yourself and verify the link to your parents. Then you can verify your parents' link to their parents and just keep going back by generation. But if your family tree is anything like mine, this might work really well for 1 or 2 generations, but then all of a sudden all the ancestors come from different places in the world. And if you were to follow this, keep it going back generation by generation this way, you would be jumping all over. I would be jumping to Denmark and England and Germany and all different places, and that's not a very efficient way to go about it. So this is the way I recommend. Follow one line all the way back as far as you can go. And remember, we're working on verifying and correcting, resolving conflicts. So we're going to go back as far as we can until we hit that point where we feel like we're going to have to do a lot of extra research to solve a problem or find the next generation. So we're going to verify as far out as we can fairly easily, and then we're going to move to another branch of the family tree. Once you get it all verified, then you can choose. Well, you can choose to work on the hard things whenever you want, but once you get it verified, then you can choose which difficult problem you want to tackle. So sometimes it gets a little bit tricky when you do this because it's like, when do you pull in the wife's family? So I kind of do a little strategy like this where I go all the way back as far as I can on, say, the paternal line, and then I come back step by step, stepping back down to catch all the wives' lines as I go. So that's another strategy that you can choose. All right, once we've decided what our strategy is going to be, then the next step in our family process is to analyze what is already known. So with each generation that you're working on your family tree, you want to ask yourself a few questions. So, are there complete names, dates, and places for every event on your ancestors' profile page? Or has the information just been added with no sources to back it up? Or is there just a date with just the year rather than a complete date? So documentary sources, do we have the sources to back that up? Do any of the details conflict? Sometimes you'll find that one record says one thing and another record says something else. Are there missing family members? Maybe there's a big gap in the children. There's a 10-year gap between 2 of the children. Maybe there are additional family members in that family. And sometimes extra people get added into the family. So we need to be looking for all of those things as we analyze what is already known. So what we're going to do is look at the historical sources and the details for our ancestor. So on the details page is where you can decide if you have complete dates and what the family structure looks like. Then again, to access the sources, we're going to go back to that Sources tab. And when you click on that, it will give you a list of all the historical records that have been added as a source to your ancestor. Now, sources are what provide evidence for the details on your ancestor's profile. And you want to make sure that you have sources to back up every life event and relationship. So in order to do that, you need to see what's in those sources, and you're going to, again, click on every source. You can click on the little drop-down arrow by each source to look and see what is in that source. And I just want to emphasize to always look at the original images whenever they are available. If you open up a source and there's an image, look at it, because the information that's on the record, all of that information doesn't always get added to the indexed version. And so if people are attaching sources, sometimes they miss things. I cannot tell you the number of times that I have found a marriage date that didn't get added, even though the marriage record is there on FamilySearch, but there's no marriage date for my ancestor. It's in the sources, it's just not on their profile page. Or maybe there are children. Maybe there was a census record and there's 5 kids in the family, but I only have 3 of those kids on my ancestor's profile. So looking at each one of those sources will help you to document and verify your ancestor's life more completely. So take the time to look at those and add those details to their profile. Another place that you can look that will give you information about your ancestor is the Memories tab. Sometimes people add images of different types of records and they aren't attached as a source to your ancestor, but they are here in Memories and you can glean information there. So you'll want to examine the Memories as well so that you can understand all of the information that's available about your ancestor. I just want to talk a little bit about privacy. When you're working on the first couple of generations on your branch of the family tree, you're probably going to be working on living people. And so you need to understand a little bit about privacy. Now, FamilySearch is just coming out with their family groups where family members can work together on a family tree with living people and share information about living people. But as a general rule, for the general population, living people are private on FamilySearch. And when you add memories to living people, maybe you have some certificates or things you want to scan and add, no one else is theoretically going to be able to see those memories except for you. And so that is well and good, but you do need to think about one thing. These memories are potentially findable with a Google search or a topic tag search on FamilySearch. And so I would just caution you not to add sensitive material, sensitive things to your ancestor or your own profile that you wouldn't want someone to find in a Google search or a topic tag search. Now, there are things called private memories where you can mark a memory private and it is not findable. I hesitate to do this because when that person dies that added those private memories, no one can access those memories anymore. They're basically locked. And so I just recommend that most memories should remain public. Just be careful not to add things that you feel are sensitive about living people. All right, let's talk about this scenario. After you get familiar with all the information on the tree, maybe you do have some conflicting details or things that just don't add up about your ancestor. So this is where we talk about what's called evidence analysis. And evidence analysis is the process by which we determine the accuracy of our conclusions and what the records are telling us. This will help us to form valid conclusions and decide which record might be the most accurate one. So in order to do this, we need to think about, first of all, we think about the record itself and the physical condition of the record. Maybe it's hard to read because time or damage has occurred to this record, and you're not able to exactly read what is on the record, and somebody might have misinterpreted it. That's the first step in evidence analysis, is just assessing the physical condition of the record. The next thing you want to do is ask yourself these 3 questions. The first one is, when and how was the source created? Was it created about the time that the event happened, or was it created many years later? As you can imagine, things that were created when the event happened are more likely to be accurate than things that were created many years later. The next question we're going to ask ourselves is, who provided the information for the source? An eyewitness is more likely to know the correct answer to the research question or have the correct information than someone who heard it from another party. So you want to know who provided the information for that source. And then the third question we're going to ask ourselves is, do the facts in the source directly or indirectly answer the research question? Now, a direct answer would be something like, if I'm looking to find when this person was born and the record gives me the exact birth date, that directly answers that question. But sometimes you have to pull together a bunch of different records to be able to answer the question that you're asking. So as genealogists, we kind of idealize records that were created, that are original, that were created right about the time the event occurred, by an eyewitness, somebody who saw the event, gave the information, and direct answers. But we all know that we don't always have records that give us those 3 ideal situations. And so a lot of times we have to pull in a lot of different records to be able to decide what is accurate. So let's look at a couple of examples. Here is a death certificate for Alfred Wakefield Beck. And this is an original record. It was created right at the time that he died. There is a spot on the left-hand side of this record for the informant's name. Well, it's for the informant's signature. But in that little field, it says can't get. So we don't know who provided the information for this death certificate when it was getting filled out. It does say the address of this person was Otto, Wyoming. Now, I don't know if anyone has ever even heard, if anyone has heard of Otto, Wyoming, I would be very surprised. One person has, great. I grew up near Otto. This is where my grandparents lived, and it is a tiny town of 50 people. and no hospitals. So I know that Alfred did not die in a hospital because it says he died in Otto. I'm assuming he died at home. The address of the informant was Otto. So, and his wife, it says on this record, was still living. So I'm imagining that it's probably his wife who provided the information for this death certificate. So you see how you can kind of think through things and figure this out. But we don't actually know. So we have to keep in the back of our mind that we really don't know who provided this information or how accurate it will be. The one thing we do know that is probably pretty accurate is his date of death, because this was created right at that time, and the attending physician certified his death. So we can feel like his death information on this record is pretty reliable. But this, again, does give us quite a bit of information. This certificate gives us direct evidence for his birth date, his birthplace, his wife's name and her age, his occupation, his parents' names and their birthplaces, a burial place, a death date, and his cause of death. So this is a fantastic record that gives us a lot of information about our ancestor. I love death certificates. Let's look at another record. This is also for Alfred, and this is a transcription of a church record. The original record, it's a baptism record. The original record was written in German, and I don't know where the originals are. I've tried to find the originals and done a lot of research to locate those, but I don't know where they are. So transcriptions are the best thing that we have. So it was translated first from German and then transcribed into a book. And for a baptism, the parents would bring the child to the preacher, the priest, whoever it was doing the baptism, and they would provide the information about the child's birth. And this record does give Alfred's exact birth date and his baptism date, and it also gives evidence for his parents. It says who the parents were. So it gives us a lot of good direct evidence with people who witnessed the events. So there is a problem. On the death certificate, it says that Alfred was born on the 10th of November, 1867. And on the baptism record, it says he was born on the 10th of October, 1867. Now, I'm going to preface this with a month difference in someone's birthday is not a huge genealogical problem. It doesn't affect who Alfred is. It doesn't affect who his parents are. But it's a detail, and this is a good example that we can walk through to see how we would decide which of these is most correct. So let's just look at some of the questions that we talked about just a minute ago. So which one was created closer to Alfred's birth? We're looking to find out when his birth was. Well, the original baptism record was created about 3 years after he was born, actually. The death record was created many years later. We have kind of that other layer. The transcription was created about 100 years after Alfred was born. So I don't know. Which one would you go with? The death certificate is an original record, and the informant on the death certificate isn't known, but we think it might be Alfred's wife. And the informant for the baptism record were the parents who did witness his birth, so they're pretty reliable. So to me, I feel like they both directly state the birth date, but I'm still confused. There are positives and negatives for both of these records, and I don't know which one I should trust. So the thing that we need to do is we need to find additional records to help us resolve this conflict. So I found 2 other original records that gave the exact month of Alfred's birth. The first one was a 1900 census. He was 33 years old at the time, and it was an original record, but created many years after the event. On this census, Alfred was now living in Utah. He was in Schofield, Utah. He was working in the mines there, and he provided that information, I am pretty sure. A census record, except the 1940 census, does not tell us who provided the information. But we have his exact month and year of birth, and I don't know how the enumerator would have known that, or the place where he was a boarder. He was in a boarding house. I don't know how they would have known that unless he provided that information. So I'm thinking he probably provided that. And it does directly state his birth month and year. The other record is also an original record, and it's a pension application that his father William filled out for the Civil War. He served in the Civil War, and he was asked to provide the names and birth dates of all of his children, and he signed the record himself. It's written in his own hand. So I feel like his father is a very good source of information. This was an original record. Alfred is a good source of information. That was an original record. The original death certificate and these two original records all agree that he was born in November. And I am thinking that there is a good chance that there is probably a chance for error on the transcription. And so I am going to conclude that his birth date was probably 10th of November, 1867, not 10th of October. So that is my conclusion for Alfred's birth date. Let's look at another example. This is an authored family history for my ancestor, Anne Munford. It's been added to FamilySearch, and it gives us some information about her. But first, let's talk about what an authored source is. This is not considered an original source. This is a source that was put together by gathering a lot of different records from a lot of different places, information from a lot of different people, and it was compiled and written in a narrative format. So it's not considered an original record, and it does have a lot of different people who gave us the information. So my question is, who was the father of Anne Munford's son, William? William is my ancestor that I descend through. So this is not an original record, and on this record it says, there is a bit of mystery about Anne's first marriage. According to Harriet Pace, George Munford's wife, so I'll just tell you, this is Anne's sister-in-law that's providing this information. Anne's sister-in-law, Harriet Pace, said, Anne and William Stubbs wanted to marry, but her family objected, so they eloped. Shortly after their marriage, William went to sea. None of the family seemed to know what happened to him, but their son William was born on the 23rd of June, 1858, at Hethel in Norfolk, England. So, is this information about Anne Munford accurate? A lot of people have put William Stubbs in, well, somebody, I guess, put William Stubbs in as the father of William Stubbs Jr. on the family tree. Well, a couple of years ago at Roots Tech, I met up with a cousin who had a little different story. Her dad actually knew William Jr., he was his grandson, and William Jr., his whole life, lamented the fact that he never knew who his father was. And this cousin said that William actually chose the name Stubbs later in life, and that that wasn't his surname at all. So how am I supposed to figure out what the truth is about this family history mystery? So I went to original records to see if I could figure this out. I looked for a marriage record for an Anne Munford and William Stubbs in the place where Anne lived in England, and I did not find one. I found William Jr.'s birth record, and no father was listed on that record, and Anne's maiden name was given as his surname, which suggests illegitimacy. So the parents were not married when he was born. Then, when they immigrated to the United States, Anne was listed as a spinster on the record, which she would have provided that information for the passenger list, and William was still using her maiden name. Before they came to the United States, there was one census in England when William was 2 years old, and he was listed as a Munford, not as a Stubbs. And then when they got to the United States, Anne married a man named George Gunn, and William was listed with George Gunn's surname. And then, finally, after William got married, the next census states that his surname was Stubbs. So the original records do seem to back up what my cousin told me a couple of years ago, that maybe he adopted that Stubbs surname later in life. So I had a pretty good idea that this was the case, but I can't leave things alone. So I found one of William's male descendants to take a Y-DNA test, and there is no Stubbs surname among his DNA matches. So I feel like the evidence is really strong that the story that I heard from my cousin is more accurate than the one about William Stubbs in the written family history. So you can see how you can use original records to help you determine what is the most accurate story about your ancestor when there is a conflict or a question about what's going on. Now, when you are doing this, if you're working on an ancestor where everything is pretty cut and dried, where things are lining up with the records, you might not need to take extra notes to try to figure things out. But if you get into a complicated situation like I've just been talking about, you will want to track your work. And you can do that any way you choose. Maybe you just want to write it in a notebook. Maybe you want to do a little research log in a Word or on a spreadsheet. Just make sure you track your work. And I always like to tell tell people when you're doing this, keep track of all the ID numbers of the people you're working with, because you don't want to lose, if you unmerge people or remove people here and there, you don't want to lose track of them. So just track the ID numbers so you can always find that person to get them in the right place on your family tree. All right, it's time for our next step, which is utilizing the map and timeline features at FamilySearch. If you utilize a timeline, it will help you spot inconsistencies in the family better. You'll be able to see those missing kids or things that happened in a time that doesn't make sense for your ancestor. You can also see all the events for your ancestor on a map by toggling on the map button on FamilySearch. And the timeline is generated from all the details and the sources that have been added to your ancestor. So I really like looking at a timeline and the map just to see what's going on. Let me tell you an example of where this was helpful for me. I was researching the Halsall family, and they have parents James and Mary. And I was looking at the children, and there were 13 children in the family. Some of them were baptized in the North Mells Parish, and the others were baptized in Rufford and some in Charlton. And I looked at them on the map. They aren't too far away from one another. And ancestors did move around and migrate. But the thing that struck me about this is the bouncing back and forth between the parishes for the baptisms. And then as I started looking at the dates of birth, some of the kids were born too close together to have actually been siblings. So this was a sign to me that this probably was a couple of different families that had been merged together. And as I looked at other records, I was able to see that that was the case. For example, on the 1861 census in England, in North Mells, there was a James and Mary Halsall, and they had 6 of the children that were listed in the family. And the same year in Charlton, there was a James and Mary Halsall, and they had some of the other children that were all listed in the same family. So I used this record and other birth and baptism records and marriage records to untangle all the information about this family. And once I had done that, I then had to use those skills that we talked about at the beginning. I had to remove the relationships between one set of children and their parents, add the new parents to that other set of children, and detach the incorrect sources from the one family and attach them to the correct family. So you can see that those tools that we talked about at the beginning are really necessary when we are trying to untangle problems that we encounter on our family tree. So here's something that also might happen. Sometimes there are no sources at all for your ancestor on the FamilySearch family tree. So there are a lot of strategies that we can use to find evidence to document our ancestors' life events. Let's walk through these. The first place that I like to go is the I in our family acronym. It's instant records. And I call these instant records because these are things that FamilySearch comes up with pretty easily for you based on the algorithms that they search with. The first one is record hints, and the second one is broad database searches. Let's talk about both of these. So first you'll want to analyze any record hints for your ancestor. And if there are record hints, they're going to show up in this little research help box at the top right of your ancestors page. This is where you get to put on your detective hat. We need to really think about things before we start deciding whether records belong to our ancestors. So FamilySearch has suggested this is a possible match, but you need to use your critical thinking skills and decide. So what you're going to do is click on the record, and then the information about that record is going to come up in a little box on the right-hand side of the screen. And I can see here this is a record for Cordella Donaldson. It has a lot of information, including her birth date and her parents. It even gives her mother's maiden name. So this is a great record. And you can see there's an option to look at the original record. There's a little record down at the bottom you can click on to gather any additional information about Cordella. And so from this, I'm thinking it's probably a pretty good match, but I'm going to click the Review Match button, and I'm going to then go to what's called the Source Linker in FamilySearch. This is what's going to allow you to attach the record to your ancestor or reject the record hint if you decide it's not a match. So the Source Linker gives you information from the record on the left-hand side of the screen and information that's on the family tree on the right-hand side of the screen. And you're just going to scroll down and look at all the details again, looking to see if names, dates, places, relationships. And you want to make sure that it is a match before you attach that record to your ancestor. If you decide it is a match, you can put a little reason in the reason box, again, telling people your thinking as you were attaching this record, and then click attach. And FamilySearch will then let you attach that record to every person that's named in the record. So that is record hints, and if you have those, that is one way to quickly get some information about your ancestor, some documents that will verify their life events. The next thing in the instant records category is to perform broad searches of databases. And FamilySearch gives us a great tool in this search records box on the right-hand side of your ancestor's profile page. You can click on any one of the icons for FamilySearch and Ancestry and others and do an instant search of their database for your ancestor. And I will just be talking about FamilySearch today, but if you have accounts at those others, you would want to look there and see what you can find. So again, FamilySearch will auto-populate with the information about your ancestor. They'll auto-populate a search just by clicking on the icon or the name of the database you want to search. So here's what the search results look like, and you might have a lot of results, you might have a few results. There are filters at the top that you can filter to narrow down. You can also look at the right-hand side at the search terms and adjust and put in more information or take out information if you want to adjust what you're seeing in your search and get more or fewer results. So on this particular search, I only had one record that came up for Cordella, and it happens to be the same record I just attached. So this broad database search wasn't super helpful for me. So what do I do next? The next step in the research process is our L in family, and we're going to start looking for additional records. So let's talk about a few places that we can do this. First of all, I want to point out home sources. Home sources are sources that are in your files or in the files of your close relatives, your parents, grandparents, cousins, aunts, and they might have something in their files that they have not added to FamilySearch yet. So you can ask around if anyone has anything that can verify the information about your ancestor. If you don't find anything in home sources, I like to look at the FamilySearch messaging system. Sometimes I have found that someone has gone in and added an ancestor to the tree. They have the exact birth date, exact death date, exact marriage date, exact locations, and all the kids, but there's no sources, and I think that information has to have come from somewhere. So I like to go and find who added the information to see if maybe they have the documentation. Maybe they have a family Bible. Maybe there's something that they can give you that will help you document. You can ask them to upload it to FamilySearch. So in order to do this, you're going to go to that latest changes box again, click on Show All, and you'll scroll down until you can find where that date that you're interested in was added. And then you can just click on the person that put this information on FamilySearch, and it will just come up with the FamilySearch messaging system where you can either chat with them via FamilySearch, or if they've added other contact information, you can send them an email or give them a phone call. And they might have information that they would be willing to upload or share with you in some way. Once you've reached out to your family members and other FamilySearch users, the next thing you want to do if you still are in need of documentation for your ancestors' life events is to start looking in specific record collections. This is a much more effective way of finding information for your ancestor than just doing that broad search that I talked about earlier. So there are a lot of different types of record collections. These are just a few of the major types of records that we might want to look at as we are working on our family tree. There are a couple of keys to looking at historical records to find your ancestor. So the first thing you want to do is you want to be looking in the right place. Boundaries changed a lot over the course of history, and so you want to make sure that you're looking in a place that actually created the records for your ancestry. You also want to make sure you're looking for the correct jurisdiction or the correct entity that created the record. Maybe the government created the record. Maybe it's a church record you're looking for. So you want to be sure that you know what you're looking for that way. And you also want to know what types of records are even available for this time period. Well, how in the world are you supposed to do all that? If you don't know what to do, that might seem like a daunting task. So I want to introduce you to the FamilySearch Research Wiki, which is a really valuable tool that you will want to be using as you are climbing your branch of the FamilySearch family tree. You access the wiki from any page in FamilySearch by clicking the Search tab, and there's an option called Research Wiki at the very bottom of the drop-down menu. Oh, I also want to say you can also access, you can drill down by clicking on the map to the locality of interest, or you can enter the locality that you're interested in just by typing it into the search box. So I did that for the county that my ancestor Cordella lived in, and it was Hocking County, Ohio. So when I got to the Hocking County, Ohio page, on the right-hand side, it gave me some really helpful information. It said this county was organized in 1818, and the parent counties were Athens, Ross, and Fairfield. So if Cordella's events that I'm looking for were prior to 1818, there would be no records for Hocking County before that time. I would look in those parent counties. If it was after 18, I would look in Hocking County. It also tells you the neighboring counties, which is really important because county borders were just lines on a map. And if your ancestor lived close to a border, they might have conducted business in the neighboring county because there might be a city right next to them in the next county, and that might be where they have gone to do things. So neighboring counties are very helpful also. The bottom little box that I have here tells us the start dates for major record types in that county. So, for example, if you're trying to find a birth record for Cordella, and she was born before 1867, which is the start date for birth records in Hocking County, you will not find a birth record for Cordella. You will need to look at an alternative source. Maybe you can find her death record and it will give her birth information. Or maybe she has a church record. She was baptized at a church. So you need to know what those start dates are because you don't want to waste your time looking for a record that does not exist. Another place you can go is the Record Finder. I love this tool. It's again in the Research Wiki. And the Record Finder is created for every state and every country that's in the Research Wiki. When you go, I went to Ohio, and the Record Finder, you can find it under Beginning Research on the right-hand side of the page, or there's another link to it under Ohio Research Tools. Both of those links will take you to the same place. The Record Finder is really valuable because it will help you know what kinds of records will answer the question that you have about your ancestor. So when you go here, it gives you a table. You can scroll down until you find the research question that you're looking for. So here is the vital events box, and I have the marriage, place, and date box in a square here. It says that if you're looking for a marriage, place, and date in Ohio, you'll look at vital records, then church records, censuses, and newspapers, and it actually gives you links to those different types of records so that you can go and see what's available online and search those collections right from this page. You can get to the search place where you search. So this is a really valuable tool, especially if you're just starting out. I remember when I was starting out, I had no idea what records to look at. People would say, looking at records, and I said, oh, what records am I looking for? I knew about censuses, and that was about it. So this is a really valuable tool. As you are working, you want to make sure that you attach any record that you find that belongs to your ancestor's profile. There is nothing more frustrating, and you will feel the frustration as you're climbing your branch of the FamilySearch tree when you find information that has no documentation, because that makes a lot more work for you. So we want to make life easy for those that come and look at these ancestors after us by attaching the records that we find. So there are 3 methods that we're going to talk about. The first is the source linker, which we talked about a little bit when we were talking about record hints. Whenever you are looking at a historical document for your ancestor, there will be an attached to tree button. It might look different in different places on FamilySearch depending on what you're looking at, but you will click that button and it will bring up some options for you. It might bring up the last person that you've been researching, the last profile page that you were on. And if that's who you're looking for, that's great. You can click on that person's name. It also gives you an option to look at your history list and choose from that. Or you can enter the ID number of the person you're researching to attach it to the person that way. And when you do that, it will come up again with the source linker, just like we saw when we were attaching records. With the information from the record on the left and the person on the right, you'll compare the information and decide whether or not to attach this record. Now, if you find information on other websites, I want to tell you about a tool called RecordSeek. You can find this at recordseek.com. And this is where you can attach pretty much any website as a source to your Ancestry or FamilySearch tree. And the way that you set this up, on the homepage of RecordSeek, this is what you'll see, and there's a green button at the bottom, and you just click on that button and hold and drag that button up to your bookmarks bar in your browser, and that will give you a little RecordSeek bookmark. So then, when you are on a website outside of FamilySearch and you want to attach a record to your FamilySearch profile for your ancestor, you will just highlight the information that you want to put in that record, in the source for that record, and then you'll click the RecordSeek button. It's just that easy. Then it comes up and asks you if you want to attach it to FamilySearch or Ancestry. So I'm going to attach it to FamilySearch, and then it will bring up some fields that it automatically populates for you based on what's in that website. You don't have to type any of this in. And the really cool thing is, if you remembered to highlight the information you want before you clicked RecordSeek, the information that you highlighted shows up in the notes field, so that will record all the information from that record for your ancestor. Then you just hit the next button, and you can type your ancestor's ID number in the little box that I have circled here, and click Next. And then you'll do a reason, just like we do on FamilySearch. Type the reason why you're attaching this to your ancestor. The green button up at the top is a place where you can tag which events this source validates or verifies. And then you'll say Create and Attach. And it tells you, congratulations, you've added a new source to your ancestor. It's that easy. So there's no excuse to not attach records to our ancestors as we find them. The other thing you can do, and this is probably for when you have found a record, a home source, or a record that you have scanned that you want to attach as a source to your ancestors tree, is you can create a source manually. So you're going to go to that Sources tab on your ancestors profile page, and then say Add Source. It will come up with this little box where you can add the date, the title, the web page. You can say, if you found this on a web page, you'll add the URL. If it's a memory that you're uploading, you can upload the memory right here from this page as a source for your ancestor. And it has a place for a citation. There are genealogical citations, and they can be confusing. If you know how to create them, do that. Otherwise, what you want to do is be able to tell people how they can get back to that record. Provide enough information in this box where someone can get back to the record if they wanted to go back and look at that. You can put in notes and your reason for attaching this source, tag the events that it belongs to, and then just say save. And it's pretty easy to do sources that way too. One question that people often ask when they are trying to verify their tree, document their ancestors' life events, is how many sources are enough? This is probably not the answer you want to hear. There is no magic number. The thing you want to be doing is you want to make sure that you have multiple sources for each one of the events and the relationships on your ancestors' tree. And then we need to think about what's called source independence. So if you have a transcript of a birth record and you have the birth record, those are basically the same source. It's the same source that's been transcribed. That is not an independent source. You can't say I have two sources that verify the date because it came from the same place. You want to find things that were created by different people providing the information at different times during your ancestor's life in order to say that you have independent sources. So those are the two things to think about: multiple independent sources. And if you feel like you have a few sources, if the sources you have say the same thing, you might only need a couple. If there are conflicts, like we talked about earlier, you might need to dig in and find multiple sources to help you make a decision and say, okay, I have verified this enough. So just be thinking about those principles as you are doing this. Now, you've gone to all this hard work, and someone comes along and then they change what you've done. That's frustrating, right? So there are a few steps that we can take to prevent this from happening. And the biggest thing I want to emphasize to you is taking the time to do what we've been talking about today, to fully verify and document your ancestors' details and relationships is the best way to prevent incorrect changes from taking place. That way, when someone comes with a record hint and they look at it, they will have a lot of information to compare and be able to make a decision. revision. So if you're fully documenting, if people can see that you have sources attached, they will be less likely to make changes than if it's just an undocumented profile for your ancestor. I want to talk a little bit about alert notes. I don't know if you're familiar with this idea, but FamilySearch does give you the option to create what's called an alert note. So on every person's profile page, there's a little notes field, and you can add any kind of note that you want about this ancestor. But when you click to add a note, there's a little box at the top left that you can check that says alert note. And if you check this box, it's going to put a banner at the top of your ancestor's profile page with red letters that says important research has been done about this person. And that will encourage people to look at your note. And you can say something like, this person's details have been verified with original historical documents. Please study any changes that you are going to make. Study the documents before you make these changes, or something similar. So you can hopefully prevent people from making those changes on your tree. Another thing I would encourage is to create a backup plan. So there are a lot of options for personal genealogy software, and most of them do integrate really well with FamilySearch. You can import and export, and this is a way for you to keep your tree. Remember, we talked about how the FamilySearch tree is not your tree, it's the tree for the entire world. This is where you can create your tree. You can keep the information that you have created and worked so hard to do. Then if changes do happen on the tree, you can easily adjust and correct things back to the correct way without having to repeat all the research that you did and untangle things that way. So just wanted to let you be aware of that and think about if you want to create your own backup plan. Another thing I really want to encourage is to always practice grace. It can be frustrating when your tree gets changed and your ancestor's profile gets all mixed up, but by judging others, we blind ourselves to our own mistakes, which we all make, and to the grace which others are just as entitled to as we are. So I would encourage you, if you do need to reach out to someone about a change that they've made on your tree, do so with kindness and just ask questions and don't make demands or ask negative questions. So that's just my little 2 cents about that. Once you have done this and done the hard work to verify your ancestor and you have sources that document all of their events, it is time to just stop and take a step back and just celebrate that you actually have done this. You have learned how to document your ancestors' life events, and that really is something worth celebrating because you are ensuring that the people that come after you will have an accurate picture of your ancestors' life. So congratulations on doing that. I just want to encourage you to give feedback in the app, and I also want to thank you for being here today. I love coming and teaching people who are not as familiar with some of the things I've talked about. I'm so thankful that you are here, and I wish you the best of luck as you go forward. If you would like to reach out to me, I would be happy to hear from you. I love to hear success stories and field questions from people who have been to my presentations. So thank you again for being here, and best of luck on your research. And ask questions, I'm happy to answer right down here. I kind of ran out of time for questions, so I will meet you down here.